Good morning, everyone from the UK. I know it's a different time zone, so it might not be morning at where you are. My name is Melius Michael. I'm a credible specialist on behalf of Pearson. Since I've worked with them since 2015, I'm also a maths teacher, teaching currently Key Stage 4 as well as Key Stage 5. And I'm also an assistant head teacher at a school in Birmingham, overseeing different areas as well. And at this moment in time, I am talking to you from my own school. So apologies if you hear any disruptions at any point when students are moving between classes as well. Hopefully we won't have much of that during today's session. Now, today's session, before I start, I should just make you aware that there is a delegates pack, which includes activities. There's only one of them that we're going to touch base today, because this has two modules. The first one's today, where I'm giving a brief description about the international GCSE, as you can see from there. Now, someone did say no voice. Can I just have a thumbs up if everyone else can hear before I carry on? If we have any, if you can hear me. Okay, so I've got a few. Okay, so it might be worth either you leaving and coming back into the session that might fix it, or looking at the audio settings as well. So as I was saying, this is an international GCSE course. It's made out of two sessions. The first one's today. It is an event designed for teachers who are new to delivering the international GCSEs, and for both math specifications A and B. So it'll give you an understanding of the content of the qualification and how to cover it, an understanding of the mark schemes, and practice applying them using exemplar student work, as well as access a range of Pearson support available to teachers. So if you are aware of this, the beginning, especially this first module, will take it as if you don't know anything about the qualification. So please bear with me at different stages. Feel free to use the chat to ask questions. It could, and if anyone knows the answers while I'm speaking and I don't notice it, feel free to chat between you. One reason we do these sessions as well is for that network across the different countries as well. And there's opportunities for you guys to interact within the chat room as well. If I don't see a question, and there'll be a Q&A at the end, so feel free to ask me at the end again, which I'll make sure we have some time to answer any questions you have. And again, if I don't have the answers with me at this point in time, I'll take it with me. I'll give you also another email, and we will get back to you with an answer to that. So I'll only answer based on that. As I said, I work with Pearson. Some of the questions might be more specific to an examiner or to our senior examiner team, some to the maths team. At that point, we will I will share those questions, and someone from the team will get back to you. So if we then look at today's objectives, and before that, just an outline. So it's a welcome from Pearson. If you were with me or in the international A-level course, or any of the other recent courses, there might be some recap about what who Pearson are and what they deliver. It's something that we always share. Getting ready for delivery of these qualifications, the content overview, assessment overview, and support from Pearson. As I said, there'll be one activity with us today. So if you do download the delegates pack, which you'll find from a link from the resource pack in the Zoom here, but perhaps we can also share a link later on so that you can download it. Within the pack, if I show you the folder, so this is the delegate. There we go. So within the folder, if you can see it on your screens now, you will have the delegate booklet, which that one there has activities. We're only going to touch upon one of them. The next session, it will be a lot more interactive, as I would have covered a lot of the general stuff from this. You can see we have here the specifications for A and B, and there's also the modular one as well, which I'll touch bases on this in this session as well. And then you also have some mapping document as well, which you might find useful to look at within your teams as well, or your colleagues at your school as well. So that's in the delegate book pack that you can download, and I'll make reference throughout the session. So then going into our objectives. So as I've mentioned here, the objectives today would be to look at how the qualifications are devised, a review of the content of the qualification, explore how to plan the course and lessons, understand the assessment of the qualification and how to prepare students, identify the support available from Pearson, and of course, like I mentioned earlier, network and share ideas between us, and feel free to carry on doing that at any point throughout the chat. So again, on behalf of Pearson, I'd like to welcome you on today's session. And when we refer to Pearson, this is some key facts about Pearson that you can see here. We are the largest UK awarding organization. We stretch back to 120 years of heritage. And then, as you can see, the 3.5 million students a year that we offer qualifications to. And some other facts on the side there. We're recognized and partners to about 6,500 schools, colleges, and employers globally. We mark over 10 million exam scripts on behalf of the UK Department for Education each year, and we operate in 70 countries. And worldwide, and as I could see when you first joined, some different people were saying the different countries that they're from. So welcome to everyone to this session. Now, if I start with the specifications again, the specifications, so you would have both copies of this in your packs. We will refer later on in the presentation about them. So and again, don't worry if you can't access them right now, but there will be references. So if you have a chance, we'll definitely use them more next session. So make sure you download that pack for next session as well. Now, when we talk about the specification is what senior examiners need to write papers and what centers need to teach the course. It's hugely important that all schemes of work written in centers are based on this document. Now, so if you are devising your own scheme of work, you need to make sure your scheme of work covers all this. The importance of a scheme of work will touch bases later on as well, but that it's always worth adapting a scheme of work based on the teaching allocation that you have. So the number of hours that you are allowed to, or you get to have with your students, and per week or per 2 weeks, and then looking at what the specification, the amount of content it has, but also the recommendations about how many hours you should give to each one. And then you adapt it based on that, but you need to make sure it covers everything else within that specification. Pearson Edexcel publish a scheme of work, which is available on the website as well. So feel free, you can download that. So if you want a structure from that to then work with, you can have that. It's in Word documents so that you can adapt it in your own needs as well. The SAMs, as we call them, or sample assessment materials, as you can see from the slide as well, there are papers and marks on which live examinations are based on. This can be used for mock examinations in your centers. Now, of course, there are other resources as well, which you can find on the Maths Emporium or other websites such as the Exam Wizard that you can use for mock assessments, but that is one that you can refer to as well. Now, on this slide here, you can see the two different specifications on here. Now, this presentation will cover content and refer to both specifications A and B. There are 6 broad topics in specification A and 10 broad topics in B, and that's something to be aware of. And this is the content that centers must deliver to all students that will then sit the exam for. And you can see also that in one of them we have foundation and high, the 2 tiers. In the other one, it's only a higher tier as well. And again, when I touch base on this, I'll say some of the benefits and some of the, perhaps you can say, disadvantages or drawbacks of having some of your students sit either one of these. Now, when we look at, here's an example from specification B. Now, on the left-hand side, the column, on the left column there, it deals with actual content that must be taught. And you can see that here. Let's see if I can use my mouse. There we go. And on the right-hand side column, it has clarifications and examples of possible content. This comes from topic 4 functions. And we see that in G variation, direct and indirect proportion are the only 8 examples, the 8 examples that of the relationship that will be examined. So it's worth looking at that and making sure that's referred to in any schemes of work, so that you teach them, and then you also set some examples within that. So that's just an example here for you to refer to and just be aware that they're there. I then move on to the content overview. Bear with me, sorry. So there are 2 papers in this specification. So this is the 4MA1. And it's worth knowing that in this one here, both are written and marked, of course, by Pearson. But the important one is that you've got 50% of the content in each one, which will be slightly different in specification B. So that's one thing to note there as well about this. Then if we look at paper 1 and paper 2 foundation, now all the content can be assessed in both of them, irrelevant if they come up in one or the other. So you've got the different topics, so the 6 topics outline: numbers, algebra, sequences, and graphs, geometry and trigonometry, vectors and transformations, and statistics and probability. Now note that each question can actually cover more than one topic. So it's not one topic per question, and that's something to be aware of as well. If we look at the higher tier now, so in the higher tier, again, all the content can be assessed in the high tier, and the topics are the same as those in the foundation. However, though, and the questions are at grade 4 and 5 are common to both foundation and higher. And the last 40 marks of the foundation paper will be the first 40 marks of the higher paper. So that's your crossover there. And that's also worth knowing. So when you decide about which tier you want to enter your students, so whether they can access that material, that content as well. So if we look at then the element of problem solving and how that comes through in foundation and higher, and again, those are things that you should consider when deciding on tiers. So the amount of problem solving in the questions. So in the foundation one, you can see there's 25% of marks are problem solving, and then you've got 15% on reasoning interpretation. And then the higher tier has 30 and 20. The rest of it usually is more fluency. And the problem-solving questions can be applied at any topic, although reasoning questions tend to come more from algebra and geometry, from the nature of those topics. And again, we, as I said, notice that there is a high percentage in the higher of the foundation. Now, if we look at the second specification, so 4MB1, again, let's look at the 2 papers, and then you can see the difference in the percentages, the weight that each one has. So the 2 papers, one of them has about 1/3, the other one is 2/3, roughly. Now, again, these papers are available twice per year, January and in June. And the papers are different in structure, and paper 1, as I said, weighted differently to paper 2, and you can see that on there as well. If we look at the actual content in the specifications, this is the content that you would have here. It has 10 topics, so there's more topics to cover than the other one. We've got number, set theory, algebra, functions, matrices, geometry, mensuration, vectors and transformations, trigonometry, statistics, and probability. Now, again, one question can have more than one of these topics as well. So again, bear that in mind. And what we want to now see is, again, the weight of problem solving and reasoning compared to the specification A, because that can also influence your decision about which specification you'd like to deliver within that. So paper 1 and paper 2 have about 30% of problem solving marks and 20 of reasoning and interpretation. And again, remember, there's only one tier here. So that, again, could influence what you decide for your students. We'll then move on to the examiner's reports, and they can be quite useful to then analyze. One for not just You can look at that before you do any assessment within any assessment before you do any mocks with internally, because they can highlight what to expect. You can then also compare trends within your school against what the international kind of cohort did that year. You can also look into that before they sit, and you could structure a bit your revision sessions accordingly. But also in the real papers, once they come back, it's worth referring back to them so that you can then be mindful of where students go wrong or where their strengths are, and therefore some of the misconceptions that arise, so that you can then influence your teaching and then make sure that your students do better in the following years. So there's benefits from that, and we will have an activity on this in the next session as well. So as you can see here, we've got some of the benefits. So they're incredibly useful documents, and they highlight in detail what went well, what needs attention from the centers. They're also in the exam wizard, by the way, and also on the results plus, which we'll refer back to later on in the presentation. Now, if we look at the 4MA1, and then I'm going to give you a minute to have a read this, and then I'll highlight a few points of this. So what our examiners noticed from that one. So I'll give you a minute to read this. I'll be back. At this point here, it's worth reading this, and you can see the advantage of referring to that. I'll also put the other slide as well, because within this slide here, there's some key points that you should take out from that. And then I'll explain a bit more in the following slides with specific examples. So have a read of this as well. And what I would want to emphasize here is that there are successive cohorts of students that continue to make the same errors. And that's why it's important for us to be aware of and do something about this. Also, the requirements of a question when it says explain, the need for a conclusion at the end, and that seems to be missing as well. So there's a key things which are worth, if we read them, we'll then start to make sure that we explain and emphasize this. As you become more experienced within the papers and you read all this information, you would then know exactly as well what to highlight to your students as they come in towards your exams. If we then look at a specific question, so in this case here, we have a geometrical reasoning question from June this year. And notice that it says, give a reason for each stage of your working. And then here, if we look at the examiner's report, let me give you a minute again to read this. So key points again, and that we can see from this question here. It's important, and I'll read this and emphasize a few things. There were high numbers of responses that show little understanding of how to proceed in this multi-step question to find the size of angle on a diagram. Some basic misconceptions appeared regularly, such as assuming that the line DB dissected angle ABC and angle ADC. Working that developed from this was inevitably flawed. Encouragingly, there were also many students who completely reached the correct answer for the size of the angle. Of these, a significant number lost one or both of the remaining 2 marks, as they failed to give any reasons or gave reasons that were not sufficient. For example, a triangle is 180, could not gain credit. And again, that's important. So the way they write the sentence is important here. There needs to be some kind of reference to the angles in the triangle adding up to 180. Likewise, angles in a circle are 360 did not receive credit, as we needed to see this expressed with reference to the angles at the point adding up to 360. This and the omission of any mention of isosceles were the main reasons for the small number of students being awarded the full 5 marks. Students should also be aware that showing the working, however detailed, is not the same as giving reasons. So you can see from here, that it is about writing the correct sentence, and it's not just, oh, I've referred to it. So it's important when we're teaching this in the lesson, we improve the structure, that grammatically, and also making sure that there's a full sentence there, and not just a reference and being okay with it because we know that they know. So as knowing that they know the maths isn't enough, because if it says give a reason, they have to form that sentence structured correctly. Here's a few more examples, and this is why I'm saying it's important to read, and it's useful to read the examiner's report. Some students are reliant on their calculators, and when asked to show full working, are unable to show all the steps involved. They also do not know the full working of their calculator, and for instance, they need to use brackets around the negative number in order to square it, such that for completing the table for the quadratic graph. There are still some students who do not show their complete mention and centers, will benefit from spending time in the future cohorts practicing showing all the steps to the solution. So they're giving us some recommendations as well here. I can also see a typo there, so apologies for that. Completing the square, probability, vector search, and simultaneous equations, 1 quadratic and 1 linear, seem to be a weakness of many students. Operations involving negative numbers were also a weakness as well. So what's important is, and I'll show you this when we go into the results plus, when you download and look at the strengths and weaknesses of your cohort or of your center, it's worth to see whether they follow the key trends of internationally, and if they do, then it's thinking about what can we do differently later on. Thanks for the annotations. Now, the next part here is looking at now for MAB1. Give me 1 second. Don't know if I can. Thank you. So in this one here, I need back my mouse as well. There you go. So similarly in this one, if we have a quick read about what the examiners have noticed, so I'll give you again a minute to this. So it's quite useful to read and see what they recommend for each one of them. Now, if we look at this, if we have a think and a reflection here, what are the implications for teaching and learning arising from the examiner's report? So it's worth actually having that reflection from that. And when you think back to all the slides that I've just shared, and feel free at any point if anyone wants to make a comment about what we've just read or we've seen before we move on. I'll give you a second if you want to type anything regarding the examiner's report. When I come and teach, or when I come and lead my meetings with my department here, so we've got a group of 13 maths teachers here, we look at this and we discuss, and then we share our methods as well. There are different methods, different approaches. Some are recommended by books, some are recommended by, colleagues, some based on our own experience as we've got trained. So it's, and then when we say home and regional, again, I think that was a reference. Let me have a look. And the home and regional, meaning also here. So it's in comparison. Sometimes there's our comparisons here within your center, and when you have within national or even in the international cohorts as well. I'm just looking at your chats for a minute. Good. So some people are making references. And then again, I'll specify regarding different. Right. So if we move on to planning. So when we plan our sessions, our lessons, let's say, there's a few things that we should consider. And again, you have, and we'll discuss different ways. You've got the specification and scheme of work that I mentioned earlier on, but also your year planners as well and lesson plans. And when you come to do that, you need to look at, we've got a calendar for each of the term, and your terms might be different in each country depending on national events as well. So any bank holidays or any school closures for whatever other reason. So I just saw your message about modular. I'm coming back to the modular in a bit as well. So when it comes to planning, you need to be thinking about any school closures, any school holidays, and then how that affects it in your preparation to mocks, and then into your preparation for exams and any revision sessions as well. So key question, how do I make sure that I can cover all the content? Now, if you look at the actual scheme of work, so here we've got a year planner, which is the scheme of work document. And then what you have here, the title, the different references, and then we give suggested hours for that, for each module. So these are suggested teaching modules and are published in Word, so you can adjust it. So from that, you get an indication which one requires, which has more content, more weight into it, and therefore should then help you structure it between weeks and terms, half terms, terms, and between each of the school holidays as well. On this slide here, so we have an example, and this is of a lesson on bounds. The plan has success criteria, opportunities and problem solving, common misconceptions, and which some questions are relevant as well. So this is, you'll get this as you download that Word document. So you'll have the overview, the year planner, and then you'll start to think of that. So it's worth when you adapt it. And then what you could do, and we've done as well within our school here, you can start adding more notes within each section, and you can use hyperlinks as well. Sorry. Now, this takes us to our activity 1, which in this case here, it's in your booklet as well. If you want to make any notes in the Word document that we've downloaded, or some notes on your side. And then what would be interesting here is to have a think first, and then make a note or type in your Word document, and then share with us here how you plan your maths lessons. How do you ensure you cover all the content? Are there any specific things that you're worried about? And again, it's worth sharing also any obstacles you have. We can make a way, and then we can maybe perhaps also create resources to support you with that as well. So it's about, the objective of this is to share ideas and feedback to the group. And you can do that through the chat. So I'll give you, let's say, I'll give you about 5 minutes first to have a think about any of those questions there. And then any other things that we would, and then we can start sharing in the group chat here. I will take as many of this as well, pass it back to the team. If there's things that we can create and share on the qualifications website, on the Maths Emporium, we can. So off to you for 5 minutes to have a look in. Thank you for everyone sharing, and please use this time to also share a few things. Well, I'll touch bases on a few of the things I'm reading as well. in 2-3 minutes. Final 2 minutes. 45 past, I will continue. I'd like to thank everyone for their contributions. We can see there are a lot of people sharing their points here on the group chat. Now, one thing, there is a challenge for all of us, and depending on what kind of school you are, whether it's a selective school, a private school, where it's a comprehensive school, there'll be different challenges in terms of engagement. There's also different challenges as well as how quickly you want to teach the course, because there's others who do accelerated course, others who do it too. We have a recommendation, and then after that it's a center's choice. But then when it comes to engagement, as well as the deep understanding and the learning, there are different ways of doing that, different activities that, again, it's all about sharing with that. We have the duty not just to teach for the exam as teachers, but to actually teach the mathematics. The qualification covers all the content. We need to ensure that we cover that because they will be examined onto that. However, the way that we teach it and then the activities that we use are up to us and based on our strengths, but also our experiences. Some of you have touched upon problem solving as well. There is a different course as well that you can follow and you can watch, which we have it live as well, where there is the teaching the actual content and then teaching strategies, so that you've got the procedural, but then you also have the strategies to actually access that problem solving and build those skills for that. And again, just a piece of advice that others have mentioned in the past, and again, just from recommendations, this is thinking about when you want to teach the problem solving, whether the content in itself is accessible. Because those are two different skills. Teaching the mathematics topics and the procedures are different to building someone's skills. So you need to think about whether you need to teach the content first and then have those sessions afterwards, or whether you want to start with a model example of some sort, then teach and then show them that you go back to. So again, the approach that you want to do can differ. Some of you have mentioned, but then again, it's looking at the timings that you've given as well. Some people have mentioned here about the specification being a bit too vague. So again, this is where using an exam wizard, and I'll show you at the end as well, and looking how the questions appear on a paper on the exam papers, as well as looking at the maths forum to see what other practice papers are for that topic, gives you an idea of what kinds of questions are asked so that you can plan accordingly as well. Thanks for everyone for their contributions. We'll move on to the next part. So the next thing here is, how is the content actually assessed? And then if I then start with what I just said now, how is it assessed? You've got the different boxes here. The red box, it's basically mentioning that the papers and maxims are written starting approximately 2 years before the date of the examination. There are 8 stages of writing, committee meetings, and scrutiny in the preparation of assessment materials. And that's why they start so early. The blue box, and if we move to the side there, dates of examinations are given well in advance and students sit the papers, which are then packed by your examination officer and sent to Pearson in the UK for scanning. So there's a procedure there. Now, the green box says, after scanning, the principal examiner and the team look at samples of candidate responses to get a feel for the way in which the papers were answered and finalize the mark scheme. And then if you will go down to the purple box, all scripts are marked electronically except for examples and large scripts. The principal examiner and team leader constantly checks the marking is accurate. A double check is the inclusion of pre-marked scripts by the senior team into every examiner's allocation. And finally, the yellow box, on completion of marking, the marks are analyzed statistically and preparations made for the awarding meeting, which decides on grade boundaries. The awarding committee looks at scripts from the previous sessions to make sure that standards are uniform from year to year. And that kind of shows, there's a link that you can then see more information at the bottom when we share the slides, so you can have a more read into that. Now, a few of you have mentioned and have asked about the modular, so I'm going to touch bases on the modular quickly as well. So if we introduce the GCSE module, we start mentioning and talking, there is that option as well. So before we look at the assessment objectives in more detail, as you already know, if you mentioned, Pearson's pleased to announce the International GCSE Mathematics Modular Pathway for Assessment. Now, the content of the specification does not change, it's exactly the same. Maybe the order in which you teach might change, but both the examinations and specifications stay the same in terms of content. If you have any questions specific, so I'm going to just show you a quick overview of this. It's not a session for this one, but if you have any questions moving to the modular from linear, please ask your Pearson local representative or visit our website for more information as well. So I'll just give you another minute to read the information from within the slide here. And then just to show you a bit of the exam structure as well. Now, I should mention that if you believe the modular route will be of a benefit, and to your existing students, or you could help you attract more prospective families to your school, Pearson can support you moving into this route, give you more information and more advice on this as well. So please do reach out to your representative as well, because then they can help you with that. Now, over the next 2-3 slides, I'll just give you a bit more, I'll go a bit deeper within the modular section here. So for example, here you can see Unit 1 and Unit 2. So the modular and linear approach contain the same content. I mentioned this earlier on, but the modular approach breaks the journey into 2 units with an exam at the end of each unit. So you can see what will be assessed in each one. If you're already offering Pearson International GCSE Linear, this will continue to be offered and remain exactly the same. So you don't have to worry that that will be removed. Students taking the linear approach will have studied all the content before the exam. So our linear specification is structured in a way where all the topics can be assessed in both exam papers. Examinations on both the routes contain a mixture of different question styles, including multiple choice questions, short answer questions, calculations, and extended open response questions too. And a calculator may be used in the examinations as well. Looking at the bottom there, let me just move the chart because that's in the way of my slide there. You've got for each unit, a formula sheet will be included, as you can see in there. And then approximately 40% of questions are the same across both foundation and higher tier as well. If I then go into a bit, so you can see a bit more a summary of it. And again, you can see how it breaks between foundation and higher tier as well, the black and the red there. And then I can show you a bit more example of this one. And again, don't worry about making scribbles on this thing or notes. The slides will be shared with you, as well as you can find more details of this online as well. And again, you don't need to worry if you have more specific questions on this. Like I said, this isn't the session for this, but you can ask your Pearson representative, your regional one there, that can give you and guide you and also help you move towards this or promote it as well within the families to attract more students as well. Now, some other things that you should be aware of. We do have guides that can help you understand the modular further. This can be found on our website. And again, ask your Pearson local representative for the maths guide as well. So please ask for them, and then you can see. Now you can see that the first teaching of this will be September 24, this coming September, with the first assessment taking place in May, June of 25, the following academic year, as it concludes. Again, a few key points about this. Learners can receive any unit irrespective of whether the qualification is to be cashed in. If a learner receives a unit more than once, only the better of the 2 most recent attempts of the unit will be available for aggregation to a qualification grade. Results on units will be held in Pearson Edexcel's unit bank for as many years as this specification remains available. Once International GCSE in Mathematics A modular can be certified, all units results are deemed to be used up to that level. These results cannot be used again towards a further award of the same qualification at the same level. Again, if you have any further questions or want more information on this, please ask your Pearson local representative for this. Now, it is worth noting here that this is only offered to the international team. Sorry, in the international qualification, and this is not offered in the UK. And just in case anyone has moved or is aware or works with anyone from within the UK. So if we go back into assessment objectives now, and we start with the 4MA1. And then what you can see here on this slide, these are the assessment objectives. The assessment objectives are basically the content, as you can see, so demonstrate knowledge of facts, techniques, and relationships in the following. So what we have when we come to the International GCSE, we have the different objectives here that the papers have to meet when they're created, and I'll explain that more in the table below, as well as the problem solving and reasoning elements that have to be satisfied based on the percentages I shared earlier on. So when we talk, it's worth actually taking a screenshot of this or making a quick reference, because I'm going to then refer to AO1, AO2, and AO3, and you should then be able to refer to this, as well as in the next session that we do together, there will be an interactive activity as well, where I'll refer back to this. But of course, I'll show you again what those assessment objectives are. So when we talk about objectives, AO1, AO2, and AO3, they refer to those key points there. If we move into then the next slide here, it shows you the breakdown of the different percentages. So the assessment objectives are spread the same way in each paper. And you can see that from the percentages there. So you've got the foundation and the higher tier separately, and you can see that they're the same exact percentages in each one. Now, in this here, what we can see, the split of assessment objective 1 is different for foundation and high tier as well. So the foundation concentrates on number, whereas the high concentrates on algebra. So I've mentioned a few things so far within the session about when you start to decide the foundation or high tier or the different types of specification. So based on the ability of your students, but this is a factor based on content as well that you should consider, because the assessments will have different weights. In fact, this could be a factor in deciding this. And then if you think about your high tier students, those ones that will move more into A level, the high tier has more algebra because then it prepares them for that A level course as well. If we then look at the foundation tier separately, all the content from the specific can be assessed in each paper. So we've got it's a 2-hour length, 100 marks each paper, and it focuses on grades 1 to 5, with approximately 20 marks at each of 5 grades. So you think about it going up like that. It's ramped up in difficulty so that the grade 1 questions are at the beginning and the grade 5 are at the end. And of course, calculators are allowed in both. So again, I'll give you just 60 seconds there, a minute, just to have a quick look at if there's any more things you want to take from this slide. So the next one here, all the content from the specification can be assessed in 2 hours of length, and same with the higher tier as well. 100 marks in each paper, but then the grades are from 4 to 9. And that's important because they need to have enough marks to get a grade 4 to sit the higher tier. And 40% of the paper is targeting grades 4 and 5. These are the common questions with the foundation tier. 60% of the paper is divided equally amongst grades 4. For the remaining 4 grades, so 6, 7, 8, and 9, that'll be the rest of it. And again, it's ramped up in difficulty. So the grade 4 questions are at the beginning, grade 9 are at the end. And of course, calculators are allowed in both papers. So again, I'll give you 60 seconds or a minute if you want to take a screenshot or make any note onto this. As for the percentages, I'll show you as well in the next slide. So a quick way to just remember and discuss so you can consider this. So there you have a few of the what I mentioned about the grades between each one of them and the weighting for each one. So if you consider the content as well as the grades that you focus, they're different on each one. So that's your for MA1. We are going to look at the for MB1 now. In a similar way, we've got 3 assessment objectives. So the assessment objective 1 is number and algebra and accounts between 57 and 63 marks. You can see that the percentage is below. Assessment objective 2, geometry and vectors. Assessment objective 3, statistics and probability. And you can see the weighting for each one. So again, this is something to, when you come to decide which of the specifications you want, you consider the assessment objectives, the weighting it has, and then the ability of your students. And again, if you want to look at, if we have a look at us on a grid, You have the 3 assessment objectives, and paper 1, paper 2, the exact same percentage. Now, we do have, if you notice, like an interval for each one, because it allows some, based on the type of question that's created, the weighting might move slightly within that range. But examiners, the people who write the papers, have to ensure they follow and they keep within the ranges here. If we then look at the paper 1 here, all the content from the specification can be assessed in paper 1. And you've got an hour and a half in length, so paper 1, because it's a smaller one, you've got less time, 100 marks for the paper. And there are 26 to 30 questions of varying mark allocations from 2 up to 7 or 8 marks. Targeted grades, we said before, were 4 to 9. With approximately 20 marks of each of grades 4 and 5, and the remaining 60% for grades 6 to 9. It is not ranked in difficulty as a 3-mark grade 9 question would appear towards the beginning of the the paper. Sorry, the short questions are first, finishing with a 7 to 8. So that's how this paper is structured. So you've got there's 1 marker, so you might have a difference there in ability, in the difficulty, level of the questions, and then the bigger questions afterwards. If I look at paper 2, the second one, paper 2 here, all content from the specification can be assessed as well. So there's not specific ones. This is a 2.5-hour length paper, 100 marks on the paper as well. And there are between 11 and 12 questions of varying mark allocations. The longer questions could have up to 15 marks overall. Targeted grades are basically 4 to 9, with approximately 20 marks for each of grades 4 and 5, and the remaining 60% split between 6 and 9. It is not ranked in difficulty, and calculators are allowed in this paper as well. Just make sure that you're looking at the right specification, please, for someone who mentioned this, because the specifications, the latest ones, have to follow and have to match these here. So perhaps have a look at that. If you want to send the link as well later on in the Q&A section, I can have a look. So if you find that link and send it to me, I can have a look and see why, but the calculators are allowed in both of them. Again, if we look at the next slide, where it mentions the mark allocation of grades. So 40% of marks distributed evenly over grades 4 and 5, and 60% between 6, 7, 8, and 9. So what type of questions are assessed? So if I summarized what I just mentioned and shared so far, in both specifications, questions can be short response, extended response, or problem solving and reasoning questions as well. And we can look at here the F4 MA1. You've got short answer questions, extended response questions, which are generally have a maximum of 6 marks, problem solving and reasoning questions, and then 4 MB1 short questions for paper 1, extended questions and responses, but go up to 10 to 16 marks with problem solving and reasoning. So there is that problem solving and reasoning in both of them, but the mark allocation is different in the second one, and it's worth having a look at. We're going to dive into it a bit more and look at the difference between those extended questions in a minute now, so that you can better understand what we mean by that. So we are going to move on to the short response questions first, and we're going to take an example from the SAM papers to actually discuss and analyze this. So coming to short response ones first, you can see on this slide here, those are examples. So we have a short response question, a grade 1, and note particularly the command words used and the mark allocations. So give your fraction, write 64%, write 9%, work out. So you've got those command words, and then you've got like 2 marker, 1 markers, and 1 markers here. So the allocation is important to have a look at as well. I would say you need to teach your students to look at the number of marks allocated. And I'm sure a lot of us do this already, but it's worth actually highlighting this to give a hint on how much working is involved. So and then when it says write, no calculations required. Workout means a calculation is required. So it's worth actually emphasizing that to your students. If we then look at another question, so that was question 2 from the sums there, paper 1, and this is question 22. This is a grade 4 question, and it's 3 marks. This is a straightforward application of trigonometry. If rounding is specified, it will be assessed as part of the question. Although any answers of more than 3 significant figures would get the marks, it's important on writing down and showing each step of the working. And that's something to emphasize with your students as well. So make a note and have a look at what I've mentioned there. We then look at another question from now the 4 MB1, again the short response ones. Here we go. In this case here, we have an example of a short response question. It is 2 marks and therefore will be necessary at the start of the paper. Sorry, it won't necessarily be at the start of the paper. No, sorry, it's a short one. Sorry, apologies. It will be at the start because it's a short one. I was mixing it up with the order of the grades. Once again, we need to show the working out because it's 2 marks, and the command word is solve. So it's worth mentioning that to the students and training them and having those expectations within your classes as well. Now, if we move to the extended questions, the longer questions, and then seeing the difference between 4MA1 and the B1, 4MB1 specification. And there's the difference where we say with one specification, the grading, the other one is the short and longer questions are slightly different in the way that they structure it. So if we look at the extended response ones, so this first one here, it's from paper 1 higher, and it's question 22 in this case. This is a good example of the extended question that we mentioned. It's got 2 parts. The answer of part A should inform the method of part B, and candidates should be aware that when we said extended response questions, we often part A leading to part B and part B to leading into part C. And then if you notice in part B the word hence. So when we say hence, it implies that the result from part A can be used for part B. However, we also add the word otherwise here, so that in case a candidate needs to use an alternative method, for example, in this case, calculus, which will then still give them marks for doing it in the correct way. So it's important to mention and train our students for that, but also rest assured that if they do think they're going to use another method, that they'll also give those marks. Then if we move into the next one, so here is the 4MB1 from a paper 2. Here, part A is a grade 4. So think of it this way. Part A is a grade 4, and then it's progressing through the grades to peak at E, which requires the use of matrices. So I'm going to give you a minute or two, give you 2 minutes to just read the question so you can understand and see yourselves how the grades are changing within that. So I'll give you 2 minutes to have a read and see what the question is in case you haven't come across it. So yes, this is the specification B, which is slightly different. If you go back to if I show you back the content again later on in the Q&A, you'll see the difference between the two. So as we can see from here, you can see how each part of this moves up by grade. So, and that's why when we talk about the full paper here, you're not going to have the start being the lower grades and the end being the higher grades. It's the short questions first, the extended length questions afterwards, and those extended questions have a different hierarchy within that. Within this next part here, that gives you a lot of information that if the slides should be sent to you afterwards, it's worth going back and looking at the specifications, having a look at what we've discussed, so that you can then participate in our activities in our next session. So in our next session, we will come back to all this and we will actually dive into the examiner's report. If you look at your delegates booklet, there's a series of activities that we will do together. So in this case here, I'm going to share some support materials and things that we offer regarding the two specifications. And then I will give you an opportunity to give me a Q&A, any questions and answers as well. So as for the support, we have a wide range of support resources and materials that are available from the Pearson website. I will show you some of the screenshots and the links in the slides that follow. The support includes exam materials and teaching and learning support, as well as a range of analysis and planning tools. And we constantly create more resources for everyone, which are always uploaded on both the qualification website as well as the Maths Emporium website, so which is free for everyone to access, that offers our qualifications. So the next slide show the materials available for 4MB1. The pages for MA1 have a similar specification for the specific content there. So the first one here, if I show you this here, so that's from our website. This is also in your packs as well. So a number of resources are available on our website. The latest papers or anything, we usually lock them as well. So you'll need your logins to download them, and that's to avoid students getting the mark schemes directly from us at least. Specification and sample assessment materials, exam materials, documents that include past papers, mark schemes, and examiners' reports will all be found there. Forms and administration documents to help with any administration, we also upload there. Teaching and learning materials include more exemplars, lesson plans, course planners, and much more can be found there for both of the specifications. And we keep adding more. And that's why I said, feel free to also send us, and I'll give you an email to share for the team. There's a maths team that, including myself, that we work and create new resources to support the delivery of the qualifications and offer them all free via the qualification side or the Maths Emporium. Just to give you a bit more insight of how that looks. So here, here's what I mean by the exemplars. You can see them there. You've got the scheme of work that you can download. You've got the getting started guide as well that you can take from there. Then the next slide here, it just shows you a bit more the difference. So you've got exemplars here for each of the papers, and you have the comments as well that you can download. And then how we use it, I mentioned a bit more, but you know, the exemplar materials can be used. You can take, so they've selected some of the questions where they wanted to share how the different students have responded. We'll see that in one of our activities. It's a nice task because it then aligns the way that we think, the way that we analyze, and the way that we mark, because some of the questions, when you look at the working, you're then starting to think, should I award the mark, should I not? And you want to be aligned with how the examiners will mark it. Sometimes the mark scheme that you have to follow that, but then when it comes to method mark, and that's where you might have your own opinion here. However, we have to make sure it's aligned with the examiner's report. So looking at this and doing an activity like the one we'll do in the next session is important because it gets us to understand how and when we should give that. If you look at this slide as well, following each question is a range of student responses with accompanying examiner's report and on how the mark scheme has been applied and the marks have been awarded. So that's important to have a look. Common errors for the questions are also highlighted. And then again, what we'll then do, we will then do some multiple choice sometimes as well to see if the misconceptions are the same. Sometimes we have those do now activities or starter activities, I would say, where we get to check if our students have the same misconceptions. So looking at that, it just keeps you aware whether your class, your school is having similar issues, and then thinking about what kind of approaches you want to do. So highly recommended. And then what we'll do is we'll look at an example of this in the next slide. You can also get your own scripts, but and you can download the examiner's report as well. And you can therefore use your own ones to do. And I'll come back to that in one of the slides later on. So if I show you the next slide here, there's an example of a question and the mark scheme from paper 1. And then what will follow from that is a student response. So you can see the student responding here with the examiner comments below and the number of marks they gave over here. You can get your own scripts for your own students, and we offer that as Pearson. However, the examiner comments won't be specifically for that student, for your own student, but you can download the examiner's report and see whether your student meets that. And I'll explain how to do that in a few minutes. Here's you have then a student response C. In this case, they go 1 out of 2 marks. And then they'll explain at the bottom why they haven't. So it's a nice task to even remove that. You try and answer and give the marks yourself, then see if you agree, and then see what the examiner comments are. And this way, if you do that with a colleague or with a group together, you get to understand how to mark and make sure you're marking in a similar way. The next slide here basically shows you how we split all our resources. So it's in terms of planning, teaching and learning, exam preparation and assessment, and then results supports as well. So you've got all the different resources split into that. And as we build them, we then think about how to group, because even our website is split into those sections as well. You can see from here, when you go onto our website, if you click on the course materials here, then this opens and it's split into the sections on the side here that you can then look and refer to. So we've got a number of resources there.
Right, what I have done for you is...
Sorry. Then we've got the specification, exam materials, forms and administration, teaching and learning materials are there. And we keep adding more and more resources like I mentioned earlier on. Now, I did mention the Resource Plus before. Resource Plus is, it takes you can then download an analysis for your own students, and you can have the strengths and weaknesses shown there. And it's a tool that we've offered for free. It's been developed in 2007. Students take their exams in a traditional paper-based way. Those papers are sent to a central processing center. They're scanned through, like I mentioned earlier before, by a series of clever machines. Electronic copies are then sent electronically to examiners. This then allows us to send particular questions from the same paper to be sent to different examiners depending on their expertise. They're then marked on a screen digitally. We can then consolidate all the rich digital data. So we have all that data, then they can be mapped back to your own center, and that's where you can access them through Results Plus. So it's worth looking at that, because what I've done before with my team, we've then noticed a gap or an area that we thought we could emphasize in our teaching, and then look at different methods and approaches, because we seem to have a common issue across within our school here. And then similarly, looking at my group as well, I'm looking and seeing if where I expected them to do well or not do well, is it the same as the Results Plus showing? So it's a good task after each of the exams that you said to actually look at. The exam wizard I mentioned before, and it might be that some people said you want to understand a bit more the level of difficulty or challenge that you need to reach for that specification. Well, in this case, going onto the exam wizard, and finding and selecting that topic, you can then see all the different questions and a variation of the questions, so that you're aware of how they ask them as well, and how they come across. You can build homework sheets, classroom worksheets. You can then create homework tasks as well within that. Okay, so you've got it's a powerful tool, and as I said, it's free to use. I did mention the access to online to scripts, and that's you'd need a login for that. It's a self-service, online, free, and instant from results day onwards. It cuts down on you don't have to send in any information, a form for this. You need to get the consent from your students and families, but it allows you to see all your students' marked exam papers free of charge. It's available free for all qualifications and will be accessed through the Edexcel online website. So it's not on the qualification one, but you can find it from there, the link, and be redirected. They do not have examiners annotations on them. It just shows you the marks. And you can then use the access alongside the Results Plus to then be able to see how the students lost on those specific topics and how that looks across them. Another thing that I've advised my own team to do is download some weak, average, and more able students, and then see the difference on where they've lost marks, so we can decide how we can stretch and challenge our top end, how we can support our weak end, and then is there any surprises, and is our marking similar to what the examiners are showing. As for other paid resources, I mean, there is the student books and active books that you can purchase. You've got the teaching hubs as well, which are available for the international GCSE A syllabus. You have the exam practice books, the revision guides that you can have, but there's also, of course, other resources from other publishers that you can also pay and use. Here's an example of the ones I mentioned here. So in this case here, sorry, 1 second, sorry, my laptop just, and here's it gone again. Give it 1 second, apologies. It's not letting me move slides, apologies, bear with me. So the resources are designed for anyone following the latest Pearson Edexcel, teachers and learners who want to best prepare for the exams themselves. They're developed for international learners with the appropriate international content, and that's being aware so that we can help within that. For the globally recognized 9-to-1 grading, which allows learners to achieve their full potential and make more informed decisions about their options for progression. Each student book provides 3-year access to an active book as well. You've got which is a digital version of it, basically, and which you can then access anywhere beyond the classroom as well. And of course, the maths is supported by the brand new Teaching Hubs platform, designed to save teachers time and help them deliver the high quality lessons. The embedded transferable skills needed for progression to higher education and employment are signposted so students understand and can engage with the skills they've gained. And again, the language use is by that. Sorry, mute there, but with me, thank you. I've mentioned the teaching hubs as well. So again, ask your local teacher representative for this. And then again, they can give you more information regarding this. They've got schemes of work that break down the international GCSE into long sessions, detailed lesson plans for each hour of teaching with time allocation to suit the different lesson lengths and in-depth teacher guides. Deliver greatest, so you've got a wealth of front of class resources as well that you can use for that. And with lesson plans giving partially scripted instructions for communication with new learning points and correcting misconceptions and interactive exam preparation resources. So there's a plethora of resources on this. And again, I would say speak to your local representative for this. As I mentioned earlier on, if I haven't answered all your questions, there is a session 2 which will go deeper into all this, but this is an email that I would suggest you take, the teachingmaths@pearson.com. If there's any resources that we can create for you, or if there's anything that you want to ask specifically about your center or your region, if you send an email, apart from reaching out to your Pearson representative, if you send an email to this as well, we've got our subject advisors, and then from there they reach out to the credible specialists as well, so we can answer and support you as well. And that's our contact information. What I will do is I'm going to have 2 minutes of break, and then I will be in the background to answer any of your questions. I'm giving then a section of about 10-15 minutes to answer any questions from you. We will go into deeper into sections with our activities in our second session that's coming up. So I'm going to just have 2 minutes of break here. Feel free to write anything you want in the chat. I'll be looking, and then I'll ask again if there's any questions before we conclude. Thank you.